Essence of Eternity. Chapter 6, Revolution, Part 2. The explorer named Tyche was on his way to the kingdom with two clear objectives in mind: to tell his people the truth and accept his inevitable death without fear of affecting others. He had no family, only acquaintances, so if he succeeded, he would only affect himself. He had nothing to lose and felt more motivated knowing that, even if his companions didn't kill him, the poison would. However, he was aware that his death would not be in vain, as his people would learn the truth and value his sacrifice in the future. After a few hours, Tyche arrived at the kingdom. The sentinels allowed him to enter, and he climbed to the top of the nearest and largest house he found. Once at the top, with the message in hand, he captured the attention of everyone present, including the sentinels and warriors. Tyche said, "People of Xining, as you may know, Prince Livong has been captured and held hostage by the Abian in their territory. They demanded resources for his release, but our king refused to comply with their demand and entrusted me to reject it, accepting the prince's death. I fulfilled my duty as a messenger, but the true reason the Abian carried out this abduction was not primarily for blackmail, but for revenge against Zil, our king, who committed a crime by breaking his own law. King Zil agreed to carry out a mass abduction in different kingdoms, including Abian, and the targets were babies and children." As Tyche said this, all the present inhabitants, including some young warriors, were surprised. However, others immediately took action to try to silence the conspirator. Despite this, Tyche decided to press on. He tried to ignore them and continued, saying, "I know many doubt my words, but I have evidence that proves it." The explorer revealed the contract that Durant had previously given him and showed it to his people, then threw it down so they could see Zil's signature up close. The warriors felt overwhelmed by the demands of the crowd, and although they were not attacked, they couldn't retrieve the contract, which was held onto by the growing multitude. Zil was informed of the situation and was astonished to learn that incriminating evidence had been presented, proving his violation of his own law. The warriors took Tyche to a room for interrogation. Meanwhile, Zil stepped forward to try and calm his people, saying, "Stay calm. Be silent and let us try to resolve this problem." As he said this, his people clamored about the contract he had signed to carry out the mass kidnappings of children from different kingdoms. Zil tried to evade the issue and attempted to calm his people, but they did not listen. Seeing that he couldn't appease them, he decided to enter and confront the instigator of the entire uprising. Upon entering the room, he found Tyche with a battered face, but despite his injuries, Tyche stared fearlessly at Zil. Zil looked at him and said, "I gave you the mission to deliver a message to those mercenaries. Why did you return with a message from them and conspire against me?" Tyche responded, saying, "I fulfilled the task of delivering the message to the Abian, and after doing so, they tried to convince me of a crime that you committed. At first, I hesitated because none of us had ever doubted your words, but they showed me evidence that I couldn't question. I swore eternal loyalty to my kingdom, which is why I fulfill my duty to show the truth to my people." Tyche appeared calm, composed, unafraid of being executed at any moment, and he stared unwaveringly at the one he no longer considered his king. Zil, after turning his back on Tyche, analyzes the situation while his warriors await orders. Due to the number of people clamoring for answers, Zil cannot risk killing Tyche, as that could provoke the people's anger and worsen the situation. However, he also knows that he cannot remain idle and must find a peaceful solution to the problem. Zil says to Tyche, "Listen, I want you to tell everyone that you were threatened to come and deliver that message. The evidence shown was fabricated by the Abian. If you do that, everything will calm down. If you say that, you will live, we will forget all of this, and we will resolve our issues." Tyche, with a slight smile, understands that they are trying to deceive him into believing that he can easily escape the situation. He knows that no matter how much time passes, he will never be at peace again. He responds, "It was my decision to start this. I told the truth to my people, and that is how it will remain. If you're going to execute me, do it now, because I won't be of any use to you alive. Besides, the poison the mercenaries injected into my body will kill me soon anyway." Zil stares at him intently and says, "So, your fate is sealed, but killing you now would serve no purpose. You will remain imprisoned while the poison consumes you. I will deal with what you have caused." Taiki, unafraid of death, replies, "I'll be waiting." After this, Taiki is taken away to be locked up. Zil orders 2 of his warriors to retrieve the contract that Taiki gave to the people and destroy it. The warriors spring into action immediately, while Zil instructs his captain to prepare the warriors to control any potential conflicts in the kingdom and maintain order. Meanwhile, Nozomi is in a private room on the upper floor of the house, grieving the loss of her brother, unaware that he is still alive. Upon hearing the commotion outside and seeing people throwing objects through the windows, she descends and searches for her father to understand the situation. Nozomi finds Zil talking to one of his warriors and asks him about what is happening outside. Zil explains that the explorer they sent to deliver a message to the mercenaries has returned to conspire against him. He showed evidence to the people, and now they are protesting. The evidence is in the possession of a group of individuals who are being sought after. Surprised and concerned, Nozomi offers her help to clear her father's name and ensure that the responsible parties pay for their actions. Captain Kamaki, in charge of maintaining order in the kingdom, gathers his warriors to organize surveillance. While giving instructions, Minri, one of his warriors, interrupts and questions the presented evidence. Minri raises the possibility that if any of them were accused, they would be executed without hesitation. Some of his comrades are taken aback by his words and reflect on the equality of treatment between the royal family and the common people. The captain becomes enraged and warns Ninri that his only duty is to obey orders and that those who doubt or oppose the king know what awaits them. The warriors prepare to fulfill their duty. Despite being alone, Ninri is determined to uncover the truth about the king's actions. He decides to analyze the contract delivered by Taiki to resolve his doubts. After finishing his patrol, he takes advantage of his shift change to search for the whereabouts of the contract. Since the warriors are looking for it to destroy it, Ninri must act discreetly. He doesn't trust the information from his comrades but decides to turn to his family, who participated in the protests. Upon arriving home, he finds his parents resting after the demonstration and asks them about the contract. His parents question Zil's actions and inquire if Ninri knows anything about it. He convinces his parents that he is trying to uncover the truth and asks them about the whereabouts of the contract. Although they don't know where it is, they mention a few names of people who might have information, as they were nearby when Taiki threw the contract on the ground. Among the mentioned names, Minri focuses on one, Iku, a young person who may have the information he seeks due to their young age and potential willingness to speak up. Minri searches for Iku, and at first, Iku refuses to speak. However, Minri convinces him that he only wants to see the content of the contract to confirm the authenticity of the king's signature. Iku agrees but only agrees to take him near the location where the contract is stored to avoid problems if anyone sees them together. Iku guides Ninri to a house where they observe 2 men and a woman at the entrance. Iku points to the house and leaves to avoid being seen. Ninri approaches the house and asks about the contract. These individuals become alarmed upon hearing the question and interrogate Ninri about who gave him that information. Ninri refuses to reveal the identity and tries to convince them that he is not part of the warriors who are seeking to destroy the contract. Although they don't believe his words, Ninri is determined to see the contract for himself and clear his doubts. The woman asks him to wait outside and enters the house with another person. After some time, the woman returns with Ninri and says, "If you truly wish to see the truth, even though no one can guarantee it, I won't deny you that desire. You just have to surrender your weapons and accompany me." Ninri accepts and hands over his sword, then follows the man named Isao. Isao leads Ninri to an empty room and asks him to wait there. After a while, Isao returns and shows the contract that Taiki threw to the ground. However, he warns Ninri that he can only observe it, but not touch it. Ninri agrees and reads the clauses of the contract carefully. Zil, the king of Shining, commits to obtaining 100 children between the ages of 1 and 5 to be delivered to the necromancer, who will make the payment upon fulfilling Zil's request. The children must be kept alive and in good condition at the time of delivery. Zil's request will be fulfilled one day after the children's delivery is completed. If the children are not delivered or Zil's request is not fulfilled, the opposing party shall assume responsibility for violating the contract and face the consequences. Ninri, shocked by what he reads, begins to comprehend the gravity of the situation. The existence of a contract involving the abduction of children raises alarming questions about the king's actions. Now, Minri must decide what to do with this information and how to act accordingly. Minri was deeply shocked as he read the contract and saw Zil's authentic signature. He was truly outraged by the immoral actions of his king, whom he had faithfully served for years without knowing that he was complicit in a crime, just like his fellow warriors. Minri could do nothing but grit his teeth in anger. Isao said to him, "Our king has violated his own law and must be judged as he judged many of his people." "I know it's difficult to." Minri interrupted him and said, "No. I have no doubts now. Thank you for showing me the contract, and I ask that you keep it hidden from Zil. I promise he will be judged." Minri also expressed his gratitude to the men who were watching over him and left the place to continue his journey in search of the truth. This time, Minri wanted to gather information from the man who had initiated the entire revelation, Taiki, who was locked up in the king's house. Minri took advantage of his position as a warrior to become one of the guards who were assigned to watch over Taiki. Taiki was confined in a dark room where he couldn't see any ray of light or know whether it was day or night. He was provided with food twice a day. After Zil found out that Taiki had lied about the poison, he was given this confinement for his deception, and he would be executed once the conspiracy issue was resolved. Minri seized the opportunity during a meal delivery to enter and attempt to speak with him. Minri spoke to Taiki, but there was no response. In the midst of such darkness and hearing a voice, Minri momentarily thought he was losing his sanity. But he tried to make Taiki react and come back to himself. Taiki recognized his voice and said his name. Minri immediately asked him about the contract that the mercenaries had given him in Abidjan. He wanted to know how the mercenaries acquired the contract and if they had forced him to conspire against his own people. Taiki pondered for a moment and said, "The contract, the mercenaries negotiated it with a sorcerer from Alkmaar. That's how they found out about Zil's deal with the necromancer. That deal was made many years before we were in service." Taiki spoke with a hint of weakness and continued, "Durant told me to deliver the message to my people. One of his soldiers caught my arm. They told me the knife was poisoned, that it would kill me within hours. They said they would save me if I returned to their territory to receive the antidote, but it's been a long time, and I'm still alive." Minri didn't fully understand the mercenaries' intentions as they deceived Taiki by putting a poison in his body that he never had. This raised even more questions for him. Before leaving, Minri asked one final question, saying, "Is Livon alive?" Taiki replied, "When I was in their territory, they told me he was. They wouldn't kill him for now, they wanted to see our people's reaction after the revelation, but he might be dead by now." His fellow guard knocked on the door to check if everything was all right. Minri responded affirmatively and bid farewell to Taiki, saying, "Thank you for risking yourself to show us the truth." Taiki gave a faint smile that Minri couldn't see in the darkness, and with nothing more to say, Minri left the room to avoid alerting his companion. Minri was intrigued and confused by this information. On one hand, the deal between Zil and the necromancer was made before he or Taiki became warriors. This meant that the young warriors of the kingdom had no knowledge of this deal, but it was highly possible that the older, more experienced warriors knew about it. On the other hand, the supposed poison administered to Taiki was simply a confusing deception. Although the gathered information lacked concrete evidence, Minri was still willing to share it with his most trusted companions and friends. He visited each of them privately to hear their viewpoints regarding the evidence presented against Zil. After gathering their opinions, he invited 6 of them to a private meeting where he would share the information he had gathered in the previous days. Out of the 10 companions he had visited earlier, he chose these 6 to engage in a closed and secure environment where no one could spy on them. During the meeting, Minri said, "Since the beginning of the protest, I have been gathering information about the contract that Taiki brought to the kingdom, and I was able to verify its authenticity. The mercenaries didn't fabricate that contract to conspire, they just wanted to show us the truth." Upon hearing this, one of his companions asked, "So, how did those mercenaries acquire the contract?" Minri replied, "I also spoke with Taiki, and he mentioned that the contract was negotiated by them and a sorcerer from Alkmaar." Upon learning this, the others in the meeting were astonished and realized that the pieces were fitting together. However, while it made sense, they couldn't take it as an absolute truth. While they were thinking, Ninri said, "Tell me, after hearing all this, do you believe Zil is telling the truth or that the man they imprisoned as a conspirator is a liar?" The participants of the meeting remained silent, staring into nothingness, unsure of what to say. After a while, one of them said, "If Taiki is telling the truth and Zil committed that crime, what can we do? Even if he is guilty, there is no one who can judge him as the king." Ninri said, "If our king is not capable of being held accountable for his crime, then he is not worthy of being our king." Some of his companions questioned his words, as what he was saying could be seen as treason. From that moment, Ninri understood that they believed in his words but were afraid to confront the problem. Ironically, this was the same fear that had overwhelmed Livon that night. Seeing the fear on their faces, Ninri sighed and said, "Thank you very much for listening to me and understanding my concern. I know that you don't have the same strength of will as I do, but our people need us. They want Zil to answer for his crime, and the only one who might be able to judge him is Livon, who may still be alive." His companions doubted it, as the king had abandoned him to his fate with the mercenaries from Abian. Ninri continued, "I will go to the territory of the Abian to do what our king refused to do from the beginning, rescue Prince Livon." His companions insisted that he shouldn't do it, as the chances of him not returning or even reaching Livon were almost non-existent. Nevertheless, Ninri was willing to try, and if he died in the attempt, he would die fighting for the justice his people so desperately sought. His companions were impressed by his determination but concerned about the risk he would be exposing himself to. Before concluding the meeting, Ninri said, "Tomorrow, I will embark on my journey to that territory. If any of you wish to accompany me, you can let me know now. If none of you desire to, then I will fight this battle alone." Some of his companions simply bowed their heads, contemplating, while others tried to ignore his words. Ninri sighed once again and accepted that he would fight alone, thus ending the meeting by explaining that it was their own decision whether to expose what was discussed in that gathering. The next day, in the afternoon, as Ninri was preparing for his journey in the same place where the meeting took place, he was interrupted by knocks on his door. Immediately, he suspected that they might have come to find him because of the previous night's meeting. Armed with a dagger, he opened the door and was surprised to see two of his companions from the meeting standing there, expressing their desire to accompany him on his journey. Ninri gave a slight smile and welcomed them. The companions were Kensun and Kawato, who mentioned to Ninri that fear had prevented them from accepting his invitation during the night. Although they would have preferred to stay in the kingdom like the others and accept Zil's lies, they knew that would never bring them true peace. They wanted to fight for their people, just like him. This gave Ninri even more motivation, and without wasting any more time, he explained his plan to leave the kingdom to them. During the preceding days, Ninri had been studying the patrols on the wall that surrounded the kingdom. The sentinels prevented the entry of potential invaders and the possible escape of deserters. However, there was a specific area where Ninri had the chance to exit the kingdom without being detected. But his plans suddenly changed with the arrival of Kensun and Kawato, who were determined to leave the kingdom with him. Before escaping, Ninri explained to them that they should only carry a light load for the journey, without weapons, only provisions, as climbing the wall with a heavy burden would make the escape more difficult. His companions understood the reasoning and agreed to carry only provisions. During the night, they set fire to the house that Ninri used as a refuge, and as the flames spread, the three warriors made their way to a specific side of the wall to wait for the fire to attract the attention of the sentinels. The wall guards were immediately alerted by the spreading fire in the house. Some of them abandoned their posts to assist with the incident, as there was a risk of the fire spreading to other houses or vegetation. This moment was seized by the three warriors to climb the wall and escape. The sentinels were distracted by the flames and didn't notice their escape. Once on the other side of the wall, the warriors ran to hide among the trees and vegetation to plan their next move. While in hiding, Ninri reminded his companions that they wouldn't be able to travel far on foot and would need horses to reach the territory of the Abian. They decided to wait for an explorer, who typically patrolled the outskirts of the kingdom to prevent infiltrations. When an explorer approached their location, Ninri lunged at him and his horse to subdue him. His companions watched the scene, and once the explorer lost consciousness, Ninri left him lying on the ground and took control of his horse and weapons. However, they needed another horse to begin their journey. To lure another explorer, they left the unconscious body of the first explorer in the grass. After some time, another explorer arrived at the scene, alerted by the abandoned body. He dismounted his horse and approached the body on foot, at which point Ninri attempted to surprise him from behind. However, the explorer sensed his presence, and a hand-to-hand fight ensued between them. Seeing that Ninri couldn't handle it alone, Kenson grabbed a dagger and threw it at the explorer, injuring him in the leg. This facilitated Ninri's ability to subdue him and render him unconscious. Kenson felt remorse for his actions, but there was no time to dwell on it. They obtained the 2 horses and some additional weapons, and immediately fled the kingdom, leaving behind the bodies of the 2 unconscious explorers who would be discovered later by others. Ninri and his companions managed to escape the kingdom and made their way to a distant tree where Ninri had secretly stored weapons. This had been planned during their time as part of the patrols on the outskirts of Xining. The weapons they had stored were sufficient to carry out their plan to rescue Prince Livon. With their provisions and weapons ready, they embarked on their journey to the territory of the Abiyan. The following day, after escaping from Xining, the 3 warriors managed to reach the vicinity of the mercenary territory. On that same day, they began their plan to rescue Livon, but first, they needed to ensure he was still alive. To gather information, Ninri took the initiative to capture a warrior from Abiyan. During the night, he patiently hid in a bush, waiting for the arrival of any patrolling warrior. 2 Abiyan warriors passed near the area where Ninri was hiding, and while they were distracted talking, Ninri struck one of them on the head, causing him to fall to the ground. The other warrior, armed with a spear, reacted to the attack and attempted to defend himself but was also overpowered and brought down by Ninri. After capturing the Abiyan warriors, Ninri tied them up and sat them back to back for interrogation, with one listening in fear. Ninri began by saying, "Is Prince Livon alive?" The warrior remained silent, pretending not to hear what was being said. Ninri stared at him intently and slowly stabbed a knife into his leg, causing him intense pain. Unable to endure the suffering, the warrior pleaded for him to stop and confessed that Livon was indeed alive and hidden in a concealed stable. With the truth obtained, Ninri pulled out a map and instructed the warrior, "Now, show me where he is." He did the same with the other warrior to ensure their answers matched. Once the location was marked on the map, Ninri told them, "Don't worry, we won't kill you, but we will set you free when we're finished." He then ordered Koado to tend to the wounded warrior's injury to prevent him from bleeding out. The next morning, the warriors gathered information about the surveillance at the stable and noticed that food was brought inside at regular intervals, confirming that someone was being held captive there. They also realized that Durant, the leader of the mercenaries, visited his prisoner at night, although they couldn't be certain if it was a daily occurrence. Knowing this was beneficial for their plan. After taking their time to gather information, they initiated their plan during the night to rescue Livon and take Durant as a prisoner, taking advantage of Durant being more exposed during his visits to the stable, which would allow them to negotiate their way out of the territory. The warriors were in position and ready to act as soon as Durant entered to visit his prisoner. When he finally arrived, Kenson and Koado silently subdued the men guarding the stable. Although they could have killed them, Ninri reminded them at all times that they should not kill anyone, as the mercenaries hadn't killed Livon, and they had no intention of doing so either. Kenson and Koado concealed the unconscious guards and cleared the path for Ninri. Once inside, Ninri overheard Durant talking to someone. He opened the door slightly and saw Livon inside. He pushed the door open and attacked the guards in the room, rendering them unconscious. However, during the fight, Ninri lost his sword when it clashed with the heavy sword of one of the guards. He drew his dagger and threatened Durant, who raised his hands and complied by backing into a corner. Ninri took the opportunity to free Livon, who was weakened from the time spent in captivity. He assured him that he would soon get him out of there and take him to a safe place. At that moment, Durant said, "I wondered how long it would take for you to come for him." Ninri looked at him perplexed, but before he could react, the door burst open violently, and Durant's men entered, aiming their weapons at the intruder. Minri immediately grabbed Durant and threatened him with his dagger, while asking Livong to stand behind him for protection. However, Livong had no intention of protecting himself. As Minri was on the ground, he saw a look of regret on Livong's face and began to doubt whether they would survive that situation. If you like my content, you can support me by giving me a like, subscribing and activating notifications. In the next episode, Trial.